Why do we play games? For each individual, this answer is different. Some may like to escape into a fantasy world and be the hero who saves the day. For others, it is about wits and defeating enemies strategically. And for others, it is a challenge, a test to clear the most difficult games. Taking away all the branching narratives and hyper-realistic models in video games of today, we are left with dots. Thousands of people once spent hours playing these dots at arcade parlors. Early video games were a result of some scientists and computer engineers who wanted to test the boundaries of technology. For them, controlling these dots on screen was enough to be fascinated with. When technology became readily available, like home computer systems, even the common man started taking an interest in this interactive medium. Art was introduced as the graphical power began to increase. Because of this, we have games such as Gris, where the gameplay and mechanics take a back seat, and the art and animation is here to deliver an experience of loss, of grief, of loneliness, of moving on. Or the game Journey, where the player embarks on a journey to the mountain. You can come across other players as well, but you can't directly communicate with them. On your own journey, you can assist other players if you choose. Each player will have their own experiences in this game. The feelings or emotions they go through will be unique for them, just like real life. History is another topic that works well with video games. It helps us understand the mistakes of our forefathers and be better prepared for the future. Games such as Age of Empires or Civilization help us understand battle tactics and think strategically, whereas games like Call of Duty or other first-person shooter games help simulate wartime perfectly. The sense of brotherhood players get while fighting alongside their countrymen, or the thrill and adrenaline rush you get when you defeat enemies are perfectly simulated by these games. Video games also serve as gateways to different worlds, be it traditional medieval worlds of knights and dragons, or futuristic worlds with robots and advanced technology. Be it an entire steampunk city underwater in a game BioShock, or a world ravaged by a virus in The Last of Us. There is something for any time period or any setting in video games. Playing games and experiencing worlds, graphics and story is one thing, but how do you come up with these worlds or design the story and setting? What is the philosophy behind some of the most popular games and designers? Civilization's designer, Sid Meier, views games as making interesting decisions. These can be short-term decisions where the player only thinks about the current objective and works towards completing it, or long-term decisions to capture or conquer an entire region. And it is in these small decisions that most of the gameplay of Civilization takes place, making this as his main design philosophy. We can see this philosophy being implemented in many games. Decisions make for interesting gameplay. Should you play defensively or offensively? Should you use ranged weapons or melee weapons? Designing such games gives them more of a strategic advantage. Your players will be forced to evaluate each situation and come up with an optimal solution. Wright, the creator of games such as Sims or SimCity, views games as systemic sandboxes, where the players aren't given a clear objective. They are just given some tools and some set of rules. Designing in such a way gives players a lot of freedom. They are free to set their own goals and objectives. In this way, the experience of each player is also quite unique compared to the rest. In this design philosophy, games are created as systems. These can be huge systems with multiple moving parts, such as feedback loops, inventory management, and resource management systems. This is a very technical way of designing games, where every mechanic needs to be properly balanced and have its own purpose. But video games need not just be technical. They can be strategic like how Sid Meier states. They can be systemic like how Wright states. They can also be cultural artifacts or storytelling devices like how Jonathan Blow's philosophy states. According to Jonathan Blow, games should generate meaning from a game's mechanics. Popular time-bending puzzle platformer game Braid does just that. It is a unique blend of story and game mechanics. Even his second game, The Witness, is about humankind's need to understand the unknown and find the quote-unquote truth. This is another game where the gameplay mechanics and the story overlap as the players solve puzzle after puzzle trying to uncover the truth behind the game itself. Another philosophy popular with game design is immersion. This philosophy attempts to create a game world, mechanics and story that immerse the player completely. The players, they feel like part of the video game itself. Clint Hawking, the designer behind System Shock and Far Cry 2, heavily uses immersions in his designs. In Far Cry 2, the environment, the mechanics, and everything point to the setting of the game, which is the civil war raging in Africa. Even the save and loading system works in this case, since war is fruitless and the player character is doomed to repeat this cycle again and again by dying and coming back to life, dying and coming back to life. Clint Hawking was also the one who coined the term ludonarrative dissonance, specifically for the game BioShock. Ludonarrative dissonance is the conflict between a video game's narrative told through the story and the narrative told through the gameplay. Essentially, Hawking was against the gap between what the story of BioShock was telling to the player and what the gameplay of BioShock was telling to the player. How can a normal person be able to kill so many enemies and so many people? In Far Cry 2, the gap was removed since the main character was a soldier and taking lives was what they were trained for. But how do you explain this in a game like BioShock? This is ludonarrative dissonance. Even games like Uncharted suffer from ludonarrative dissonance, where we see Nathan Drake, who is a normal archaeologist, mow down dozens of mercenaries and show no remorse. All he has to offer is one quick one-liner instead. This portrays Nathan as a psychopath if we think in terms of what the game and the story have told us so far. This led the industry to come up with a common rule of thumb. The cutscenes are canon, which meant that anything that happened in a cutscene was to be accepted as truth, and anything that happened outside the cutscene or what the player performed was to be disregarded, thus maintaining the innocence of characters such as Nathan Drake and Lara Croft. Coming back to the topic of immersion and BioShock, it is still considered as an immersive game because people were able to get into the world of Rapture and understand the characters' motivations in the game. This gave rise to another philosophy in design called narrative immersion, where the story, characters, and world building are so well developed that they offer immersion to the players. We have seen a rise of these kind of games recently. Telltale games like The Walking Dead that explore a post-apocalyptic world filled with zombies where humans pose a greater threat than the undead, or the Dark Pictures anthology games that gives players a short horror experience through its narratives and choices. Traveling to the east, we get some more design philosophies. Taking influences from cinema and theatre and heavily formulating the stealth genre is the game designer Hideo Kojima. His philosophy focuses on meta-narrative devices. Meta-narrative means reflecting some real-world aspects within your game's stories and mechanics. If we look at the game the Metal Gear series, they are the best anti-war games available. Although they themselves are war games, they heavily criticize the actions of war through their games and through their mechanics. This is what is called as meta-narrative devices. While designer Fumito Ueda's philosophy is design by subtraction. He urges designers to remove everything and anything from the game if it distracts from the game's central experience. His games like Eco reflect this. By stripping away the traditional tropes found in video games, he creates an emotional experience by keeping the companion character in focus. The game The Shadow of the Colossus also follows the same design philosophy. By removing smaller battles and keeping only the main colossi to defeat, the game becomes that much more engaging. And finally, we come to Shigeru Miyamoto. His philosophy is form follows function, which means that the game mechanics should be fun to play, no matter if there are any other additional mechanics to support the main action. Each action should be fun to perform on its own. When we see Nintendo games, they tend to be more fun to interact with. This is because each action and each mechanic has been carefully constructed, making sure its purpose is clear. While coming up with ideas for your game, you can take aspects from one or more designers. You can choose to have tight systems like Wright, but still have them mean something in your game's mechanics like Jonathan Blow. You can choose to focus only on the story or art and create a narrative immersive game, or you can create the next tactical strategy game where only stats and numbers decide the outcome. But before you start designing anything, research and find out all the various steps taken by the gaming industry to reach this point. Always be inquisitive and eager to learn something new. To be able to think like our peers, we need to start diving into various topics. Those who are open to learning will find that life has much to teach them. Read books, look at talks, participate in various gaming events. Get so much experience in your life that you can turn any little interaction into a living, breathing game idea. So again, why do we play games? It is our form of expression, our desire to give a new and rich experience to the player. And who knows, in the future, we will start referring to your design philosophy as well.